President Trump is claiming victory in some of yesterday's closely watched congressional primaries. In Alabama, the president's former Attorney General Jeff Sessions lost his bid to face off for his old Senate seat to the Trump-backed former Auburn University football coach Tommy Tuberville. It is one of several critical seats Republicans hope to regain in order to keep their Senate majority this November. For more on yesterday's key takeaways, let's bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. So Caitlin, what does this mean for the president? And I guess more importantly, let's just talk about Jeff Sessions, man. I mean, how, from being what some of his Republican colleagues would say was a respected long-term senator to achieving what many have said was his dream to be attorney general to now this. What does it mean?
That's right. It's a remarkable fall from President Trump's orbit. Remember, 4 years ago in February, Sessions endorsed Donald Trump. He was the first senator to do so. He found in Donald Trump a kind of a kindred spirit, someone who he believed had been talking or was speaking to a lot of the issues that he had been talking about, particularly on immigration. Remember, Stephen Miller, the president's top aide, was also an aide in Sessions' office. And so that was a remarkable moment, and one that kind of gave President or then candidate Trump some legitimacy in Republican circles. Fast forward to the Trump administration, and the Russia investigation really led Donald Trump to kind of be opposing Jeff Sessions throughout his term as Attorney General. The Attorney General job was a dream job that Sessions had, gave up a very safe Senate seat. He could have been a senator in Alabama for a long time to take that Attorney General job. And I think this really shows the ways in which first, Donald Trump has a real hold on the base of the Republican Party, and also kind of how the president's grievances extend pretty far. He actively campaigned for Tuberville in Alabama. This is a candidate who does not have political experience, does not have this Washington experience. As you mentioned, he was a former college football coach, but this really shows the ways in which Donald Trump's hold on the Republican Party, the base of the party, really transcend any kinds of policy or ideological issues.
And to that point, Caitlin, in Texas, former White House physician, first-time candidate, Ronnie Jackson won the House GOP nomination there. He did receive an endorsement from President Trump. What's the likelihood of him actually being able to win the seat?
Well, this is a very Republican district, so Jackson is pretty much on his way to becoming a member of Congress, which is pretty striking considering that, this is a physician who was the physician for Obama and for Trump. Trump had picked him to lead the VA, but he withdrew his nomination after coming under scrutiny for allegations of misconduct, allegations of fostering a hostile work environment, made a lot of headlines there, ran for Congress, had the president's support, actively campaigned on that kind of support, and that helped him win this primary in northern Texas, and he is likely headed to Congress, again showing the power of the president's endorsement among the base of the Republican Party.
Two other closely watched races yesterday, Caitlin, Maine and Texas, where Senators Susan Collins and John Cornyn are fighting to keep their seats. What's going on there?
Right, well, Democrats got their preferred candidates in these primaries. MJ Hager in Texas is a former combat veteran. She was a big recruit for Democrats, so she'll take on John Cornyn. Remember, Texas is increasingly becoming a battleground state. Our latest CBS News battleground tracker finds a really close race there between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, of course, a state that has long been Republican and a state that Donald Trump won in 2016. And going over to Maine, where Susan Collins is up for re-election, facing a very difficult re-election challenge. Democrats now have Sarah Gideon, who's the Democratic House majority leader there, is going to be running against Collins. So these are two big Senate races to watch. As we watch the presidential, it's also important to keep an eye on these down ballot competitive races because the future of the majority in the Senate is also potentially up for grabs.
So the president has, over the past several months, and he continued yesterday, to express concerns about mail-in ballots. we know that you wrote a really interesting article about mail-in ballots, the way it's going to impact things in November. We can kind of throw out the idea of election day because it's going to take a lot longer to count these ballots. People are more concerned about showing up to the polls because of COVID-19. Give me a sense of what officials are anticipating when it comes to the election in November and the number of people who will probably be mailing in their ballots.
Right. Well, a few different things to unpack there. We've seen in these primaries over the course of this year during the pandemic that people are preferring to vote by mail than vote in person, just given the uncertainties and safety measures that are required to vote in person. So in states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Georgia, officials that I talked to said that they received more mail-in ballots than ever before. And in Pennsylvania, for example, it was really the first time the Secretary of State there told me that more people voted by mail than voted in person. So this is shaping up to raise a few challenges heading into November. First, election officials across the country, but in these key battleground states, Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, states that Trump won, but won very narrowly, so every vote counts, they are expecting this to take a very long time to count and process all of these mail-in ballots that they are likely to receive. And the biggest reason why is because in these states and others, election officials aren't allowed to even open mail-in ballots until Election Day. So think about that. You're having people show up to the polls in person, and then you're having this flood of mail-in ballots, which you can't even begin to process. And by process, I mean just opening up the ballot, taking the information out, checking all of the requisite safety precautions and security measures, like signature checks and others, to be able to kind of then put this into a scanner. That takes a lot of time, and we've seen that take a lot of time in these primaries. So these officials are really kind of sounding the alarm now to kind of prepare the public that this could take a while. Here in New York, the primary was 3 weeks ago. They're still counting ballots. And it's important to really inform the public that this may take a while because the integrity of the election is at stake. And that's especially important because you have the president really denigrating mail-in voting, saying that it leads to fraud, although those cases are extremely rare. Just to give you a sense, the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, looked into claims of absentee voter fraud and found only 200 cases over about 2 to 3 decades. So very small numbers here, and those are almost often apprehended. So you have the president kind of denigrating the process and raising questions about it, and that creates even more of a burden for these poll workers and state officials.
And finally, Caitlin, really quickly, former Vice President Joe Biden unveiled a $2 trillion climate plan yesterday. In the next 30 seconds or so, walk us through what this plan entails and how it's being received.
Well, it's being received very well from progressive groups, and it's a way in which the Biden campaign is showing how it would govern on the issue of climate change. This is an important issue, a driving factor for a lot of voters, especially young voters. So showing kind of the ways in which the party is kind of coalescing around this more progressive response. And it's also important to note kind of a backdrop or context for Biden giving these policy speeches, and we're expecting more of them. In our CBS News Battleground Tracker poll, what was really interesting to me was that most Trump voters or supporters were saying that they were voting for Trump or planned to because they supported him and liked him. But for Biden supporters, a plurality said that they were supporting Biden because of their opposition to Donald Trump. So you're going to see Biden trying to make more of a affirmative case, a vision for his candidacy, so that it's not just kind of running against Trump, although that is something that we see really fueling the base of the Democratic Party.
All right, Caitlin, thank you so much.
Thank you.